They always have to point out the length of service. I'm getting a little sensitive to that. As the colonel said, I school this crowd about the history of this regiment, about the World War I battles, notably Belleau Wood, or the World War II island campaigns, almost too numerous to mention, that together spelt the doom of an entire empire, how the Marines and Navy docks of this regiment saved the day at Pusan, re-established American pride in our armed forces by pulling off the miracle that was Incheon, and fought their way out of an impossible death trap at Chosin. Then there was nearly 8 years of unrelenting and murderous combat in 10,000 jungle battles in Vietnam, whose veterans are revered by every Marine and sailor in our Corps today. Finally, there is the fight we fight today in Afghanistan, and just a few years ago in Iraq. And who knows where the next chapter of this war will take the 5th Marines. As we gather here today, it is vitally important that we remember that our nation is still at war, and I think will be for years, if not decades to come. It may be an inconvenient to some, but I think it is reality. It is not in our power to end it, but simply to fight it, until our murderous enemy, who hates us with a visceral disgust for everything we stand for, either gives up or we kill him. You know, because many of you have fought him. He's as dangerous as any opponent we have ever faced. He is more complex than any we have ever fought. He fights by no accepted rules of conflict, and for goals no rational, decent human being, regardless of religion or culture, could ever understand. This is not about our friendship with Israel or because his political leaders don't know how to govern him. It is because of who we are that he hates us, about the way we live our lives, about the way women and little girls are treated in our culture, the way we raise our children, live our lives, and worship God in any way we want to. It's about us as a people, as a society, as a culture, as Americans. He's guided by a vile ideology that despises who we are, but I don't give a good goddamn why he hates us. I don't have to worry about that. Marines don't have to worry about that. And if he wants to go to hell, I know an awful lot of Marines and sailors know how to do that. First to the Marines and sailors who are with us here today. Each and every one of you should be celebrated for what you have done for the nation in this war against terrorism. For nearly 12 years now, our country has watched as strong men and women like you have again stepped forward to defend the nation, and this has been the case ever since the birth of our republic. On 9/11, when our fellow citizens were wondering who would protect them and who would protect their families, and were asking in their fear what can be done against such reckless and mindless hate, you made very different choices in the wake of those attacks. Your fellow Americans have stood in awe of what you have done on their behalf every day since that day. You and your families are the 1%. You knew full well a bitter war was in your future, whose end no expert even today can predict. And not only did you elect to serve, but unlike the others, you were tough and committed enough to become United States Marines. Or crazy enough to step forward as the Navy's best to serve with us. And sailors, either way, you're our shipmates, you're precious to us, and we love you. By enlisting or re-enlisting since we were so brutally attacked on 9/11, you joined the unbroken ranks of true American heroes. You rushed to the colors not for money or for benefits, because the nation you loved was attacked. Your families were in danger. America's way of life was at risk. That there was an away game to be fought against men who are dedicated to an extremist view that can never be reconciled with American values and simply has to be defeated. The response of Marines serving today is what it has always been, and that is an individual commitment to protect the nation, swearing an oath to whatever God you might worship, and to do so to your deaths. Those of us who have worn the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor will never lose faith in the goodness of our country. We have never doubted the correctness of our cause. Many of us have killed for our country, faced terrifying fear, mutilation, and death for our country. Those we protect, safe and comfortable in America, cannot imagine what many of us have been through, what horrors we will carry in our heads and in our hearts for the rest of our lives. But this has always been the case in all the wars we've fought and been sent to fight. Not to build empires or to enslave any people, but to protect our nation and its citizens. And Marines go and do what needs to be done without apology, without reservation, without qualification, or without hesitation. We do it because the nation sends us. We don't care what the theorists or the pundits class think. And it's always been that way, that the very few sacrifice for the many, while the critics, who are infinitely less committed and have never been in the arena with us, live their lives in the shadows of men and women like you. You came to our ranks. You came to our ranks to serve the nation when you did not have to. Indeed, when every influence in our lives and in your young lives screamed at you to go in a different and an easier direction, you didn't. For some reason, you broke away from the self-serving and decided to march to the tune of a different drummer, to make a difference in this dangerous world. You're among a very few in our country today who possess enough steel in their backs and enough character in their hearts, and continue to believe in this country enough to put life and limb on the line without qualification and without thought of personal gain. You step forward to fight an enemy that is a savage and offers no quarter. And you fight him with an honor and a humanity he does not deserve. You have kept our honor clean. Like anyone who's ever worn the uniform before you, you never hesitated or did anything other than lean into the fire and with no apparent fear of death or injury, rush to the sound of the guns. You fight today like your fathers did in Vietnam and like your grandfathers did in Korea. In the same way every Marine who has ever worn the uniform has fought since the birth of our country. While some think we've produced yet another generation of materialistic and self-absorbed young people, the nation watches every day in wonderment at what you do, asking not what your country can do for you, but always, and with your lives, what you can do in service to America. And while fighting and dying, you have learned what every American used to know, used to hold in his or her heart, used to be taught in our schools and at their mother's knee. You have learned that the real strength of a squad, a platoon, a country, does not come from making a religion of diversity or emphasizing the differences among us. On the contrary, those of us who serve, regardless of branch, have come to a profound understanding of what our founders and ancestors understood as they built a nation that was once proudly referred to as a melting pot. In our armed forces, the ultimate, most successful institution, service members have come to understand the simple fact that America's strength was and should again be as a people stitched together by a shared sense of history, values, customs, hopes, and dreams. That there is a great power in us as individuals, but individuals who voluntarily work together and support each other. We also know that the opposite is true, that we are weakened and could lose what we have if we continue down the path of what's asking what's in it for me, as opposed to what's in it for us. That in spite of the efforts of those who make their living sometimes driving wedges between us based on race or religion or ethnicity, we have learned to serve on our own while looking at our brothers and sisters beside us in the ranks. That it's not about the color on the outside, but about the character on the inside. That it's not about where on earth you were born, but only why you came to America and what you did when you got here. That it's not about the God you worship, but that you will respect the right of your neighbor to worship any God he or she pleases in any way they want. That it's not about what the individual can achieve, but all about achieving together as a people, as friends and neighbors for the common good. That there is an exceptionalism about our country, our America, and we should treasure it. We should treasure who we are and why we are extraordinary. Final comment to the Marines and sailors present. You will all soon enough finish your military service and go home to the cities, to the villages, to the hometowns that you came from all across America. You'll hopefully find wonderful spouses and raise children who are at least as good as you are, and will hopefully bring you great pleasure. For sure, you'll put on a lot more weight. Many of you will lose your hair. But regardless of where you go, how fat you get, are what you do for the rest of your life. Never forget and be proud till the day you died that you served your country. And in many cases fought and died for it. And never forget your buddies that never made it home. Remember them for the heroes they are, for the commitment they made, for the price they paid, and pray for their families and their loved ones and their friends they left behind. Keep Memorial Day sacred for this purpose. Never forget we owe them at least that much. And now, to the precious Gold Star families, to the moms and dads, sisters and brothers, spouses and friends of the fallen, I am sorry. From the bottom of my own broken heart, I am sorry. You're all people, though none of you wanted to be special in this way. When your son walked in and told you he wanted to be a Marine or a Navy corpsman, you were, I suspect, very surprised. Hopefully you were very proud. But then I am sure panic set in as you knew what that could mean. You likely hid it all very well, but the possibilities were never completely out of your minds. Not really, not ever. As it turned out, the unthinkable happened, and when it did, like me, I'm sure, you wondered why God passed this terrible cup to you. Why he thought you were strong enough to shoulder this burden, but as it turned out, you were. You had no choice. People often ask people like us how we're doing. It's hard to answer that question. We've never been through this before. Good, bad, how can you tell? I know where you are in all of this, and there's nothing I can say, nothing anyone can say, to take this unbelievable sadness away from your hearts. There are no words that can make it better, I know that. But what we have are the wonderful memories of our sons, our brothers, our little boys, and the joy of watching them throughout their lives growing into decent and wonderful young men. And we have in our hearts the memories of a young husband, those of you that are spouses, who was a real man, who loved you, but was driven to serve. I think I can accurately say from the moment you were informed of his death, you have struggled endlessly with the question as to whether it was worth it. Worth the life of someone you love so much to be sacrificed even for such a noble cause as our America. Every time I've asked it, I've come up with the same answer. I bet it's the same one you come up with as well. But it came to me the day I stood beside his grave at Arlington, as men exactly like him folded his flag so lovingly. I realized the question was not mine to ask or to answer, that it didn't matter what I thought, only what he thought. The answer was his to give, and he gave it by his actions that day, by the entire life that brought him to the instant he was lost, by joining the Marine Corps to serve his country when we were at war, by fighting hard to be an infantryman out of boot camp, by bravely pulling his share of the load in battles like Fallujah II, by being the best lieutenant he could be so he could better lead his men and get them through the hell he knew was coming in Sangin. When he went down, he was exactly where he wanted to be. He was doing exactly what he wanted to do. He was surrounded by the best men on this earth, his Marines and his doc. And I thank them for caring for my boy after God in his wisdom and for his own purpose took him to eternity. That is the answer to all of my questions. I need nothing else. And because of his loss, I've gotten to know other brave and courageous men like him from his regiment that for some reason stepped forward as he did to serve when none of them had to. They were my son's buddies, men like Donnelly, Tawny, Belk, and Wyatt, now all gone. Others like Parks, Murray, Barone, Schumann, West, Gallegos, and Dorsey, that serve on and are a comfort to the Celtic. Though I've come to realize that I will never get over his loss, that I will forever miss him, and that this sadness will never go away, I take comfort in the fact that neither will my pride. I hope your wonderful sons, now gone, help you find the same answer to the questions I know are in your hearts as well. Listen to him. He will help you through this until one day you are with him again. In closing, I'd like to share with you a poem recited by our closest allies and friends, the British, the Canadians, the Australians, and the New Zealanders. On the day they remember their war dead, they recite this poem. In Britain, their tradition is at the exact moment the guns went silent and World War I ended. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of November, the 11th month, 1918. The entire nation comes to a complete stop. They observe a moment of silence for the over 1 million they lost in the war to end all wars. But before the silence, they all recite a most beautiful poem, the Ode to Remembrance. It goes, "They went with songs to the battle, they were young, straight of limb, true of eyes, steady in the glow. They were staunch to the end, against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. God bless you all. We must never forget them. Semper Fidelis."